Hey, it's Ben from ZOAR Fitness, and on this Aspen episode, I'm going to be answering how should a beginner learn all the skills in CrossFit. And just so you know, this is part 2, so if you haven't watched part 1 yet, I recommend going and watching that first. All right, so this question came from Martin Dewey. He said, I've worked out consistently most of my life, but what I've done is mainly bodybuilding style workouts in a commercial gym combined with lower intensity cardio. I want to get as good as possible at CrossFit, but all the movements can be overwhelming at times. What model and training do you recommend I follow to improve and learn all of these different skills? All right. So in part 1, I talked a little bit about tier 1 and tier 2 skills, basically just understanding that like tier 1 skills are the actual movements themselves. So if you think about what it looks like to do a thruster versus a muscle up versus handstand walking versus double unders, those are all different skills, and I would say like the actual movement itself is the tier 1 skill. So tier 2 is all the things like breathing while you're doing that movement, thinking about pacing and how you're going to break up the reps and how you're going to compete with the people next to you are all more so tier 2 skills. So it's like higher order thinking. So this part, on part 2, I'm going to focus on like the principles of motor learning and how to apply them to tier 1 skills, right? So if you're trying to learn double unders or handstand walks or any of these other skills, how can you best do that, right? So let's get into it. Principles of motor learning. A few things. There's more than this, but I think these are the biggest takeaways. I've taken a whole college course on motor learning. There's a lot, like there's a whole field, right? So understand that I'm just kind of scraping the surface, but for a lot of people, as long as they follow the basic principles, they're going to do really well. And I find that most people don't actually follow the principles, and because of that, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot and end up wasting a lot of time, right? So the first thing is duration. So how long are you actually practicing this skill? So obviously duration, moderate is obviously very kind of a general term. It's not super specific, and the reason I left it pretty open-ended is because it's going to be different for each skill. If you're learning chest bar pull-ups, you have many fewer reps than if you're learning how to row, right? Because if you're on a rower, it's a low eccentric environment. You can keep kind of going and going and going, and you're not going to get super sore from it, right? Whereas chest bar, you're probably going to tear your hands if you do too many, or you're just going to break down, you're going to get joint pain, mechanical pain, like it's not going to be good, right? So basically you're going to go to the point where you start to improve and you can see progress, and it's more than just like a warm-up that you're getting into it. You can actually spend some real time doing it, but you're stopping before it starts to break down and actually get worse, right? So there's a point where as you learn skills, rather than getting better, it's going to get worse. As soon as that happens, you need to stop, right? So as soon as you realize that you're getting frustrated or you're getting a little bit tired or any of those things are happening, you got to stop and just kind of move on for the day, right? And I think that's a difficult one that people often mess up. 2, frequency. So how often or how many times per week are you training or practicing this movement? So again, in general, this is going to be relatively high. So barring like something that's super going to take a lot longer to recover from, again, if I use the example of chest to bars, it's going to take a lot longer to recover from chest to bars than it is like running intervals even. Like you think of running intervals as really challenging, but you could probably come back and do that multiple days in a row potentially, especially if you have any sort of base there. Whereas again, it's not just a great idea to be practicing high rep gymnastics all the time, right? So that being said, you want to think about getting as many sessions spread out throughout your week as possible, barring again recovery deficit. So I would say a good recommendation for most people is starting out at 3 or 4 days per week, right? So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Before class, I'm going to warm up a little bit and hit some double under practice, right? So that'd be a really good example that I have over here. Double under learning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You have a 15-minute clock. You set the clock, right? That's all the time I'm going to have for double unders, or you just do it before class. You show up half hour early, do 5 minutes of movement prep and warm up, and then you do another 20 minutes practice. You rest the next 5 minutes, and then you jump into class, right? Something like that. So it's kind of like working with your schedule, the time you have. Again, just trying to have frequency high, because if we see these things more often, we're going to adapt to them better, right? If you practice double unders 3 times a week, you're going to get them a lot quicker than if you do them every 3 weeks, once every 3 weeks, like when they randomly show up in a workout. So lastly, fatigue, and this is the one I see the most mistakes with. Fatigue must be low. Low is almost like no accumulation. So if I'm practicing double unders, I'm going to do 1 attempt at making double unders, and then when I trip up after 5 seconds of me trying to do it, I'm going to stop and wait probably 60 or 75 seconds until I am completely recovered. I'm relaxed. My vision can be relaxed. I can like smile, and like my breathing's easy. Like the breathing is never an issue. Like again, because we're trying to take the tier 2 skills out of it, right? We don't have to worry about state. We don't have to worry about, again, breathing mechanics or anything like that. We just want to worry about the movement itself. So again, that's why we need fatigue to be low. Oftentimes I see people in the practicing, and they either are doing it in the middle of a workout or during a timepiece, or they're trying to do it in like a scenario that's just not going to happen, right? Or they're just trying to practice and they trip up and then they start again right away and try it again. All this is, again, not what you want to be, right? Wait, get completely recovered, and then try it again. Lastly, what we need to understand is that we're going from a conscious effort to an unconscious performance, right? So conscious is like I'm thinking about everything that I'm doing. I know, okay, I have to put my wrist right here. I have to jump with this timing. I have to think about not piking at my hip. I have to be nice and long, and all these different cues that I'm thinking about. Eventually, we need to get to the point where we don't think about anything, and we're just kind of there, present. We're focused, but the focus is kind of soft and it kind of hovers around versus focusing on one specific cue, right? Or one specific performance cue that's helpful for you. Or we can focus on a tier 2 skill at that point. But we have to realize that this transition to conscious to unconscious, it takes a long time, it takes a lot of practice, and it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. And sometimes you're going to make a lot of progress quickly, and sometimes it's actually going to regress and you're going to get worse for a little bit before things get better again, right? So I would say have patience here, right? Have an understanding that this is a long, slow process, and that's a fine thing. That doesn't mean that you're progressing too slowly. It just means that you need to be patient. Right. Next, drills and progression. So you have to think about how are you actually spending this duration? How are you spending your time when you're practicing? You need to have kind of a game plan of, okay, I'm going to be moving through these different set of drills each time. This is how they're going to progress over time. This is how they're going to change over time, or at least have a good idea, or talk to someone who's done and gone through this progression before. Or even just like learning the movement before, like what things helped you, what things were beneficial, what things like drills that are super common that you in particular find helpful. All that kind of stuff is going to be extremely helpful for you actually learning the movement. So talk to people that have done it, find drills and progressions that you can work through to make your time the most effective that you can. All right. What does learning look like? So learning is not this perfect trajectory where you just get a little bit better each day. Like that's what people think learning is. Like, okay, I did this, and the next day, I did 3 double unders, and the next day I could do 6 unbroken, then I could do 12 unbroken, and then I could do 24 unbroken, and then I could do them in the workout unbroken. It's like, that's not how it works. Like, you might go like 3 double unders, then you get 6 the next day, and then you're down to 0 the next day, right? And then you go, okay, I got 12 the next day, and I'm back down to 6, and then I'm at 0 again. It's like that can be really frustrating if you can't like zoom out and see what's going on. Like, yes, you're getting better, but it's not linear, right? It kind of happens in these jumps, right? So think about it like gas prices. Like gas prices always go up, but they dip every so often, right? So if you were like super excited every time gas went down a little bit and you didn't realize that, well, yeah, it's going to go back up, and when it goes back up, it's going to be higher than it was before, right? If you don't see the trend by zooming out, it can be really frustrating and confusing. Whereas if you just understand that's the process of learning and that's what learning looks like, that's what learning is, then you're okay with it, right? So just kind of understand, again, be patient, be sensitive to what you're going through as you're going through this, right? I would say this is a big, important factor. Be childlike, right? So if you watch a little kid learning to do any sort of like new thing, like even like a little kid learning to walk, they're like so excited and like smiling when they're walking, and then they like fall over and they're still smiling. They pop back up and they're going again. Like they just, again, it does not phase them when they mess up. Like you don't see like a little kid and they're trying to walk and they plop down on their butt and like sometimes they get frustrated and start crying, but like most of the time it's like, yeah, they understand that like they don't even like think about it. There's not even probably as much conscious thought going on there, right? So it's just like a completely different thought process. And you need to understand that like if you're getting frustrated, if you're like, ready to throw a fit because and like throw your double under rope in the corner because like you're just like so like upset, like there's something else going on there. Right? So you need to like understand that like, okay, this is something that I just need to be more relaxed about. Just like have fun with it. Literally try to like smile as you're learning something. Be relaxed, have fun with it, right? If you do those things, you're actually gonna learn the movement a lot quicker as well. All right. So let's go into some practical application things. I'm just going to put an example over here, and obviously you could apply this to any skill. I just chose double unders because double unders are probably one of the movements that people have the most challenging time learning. And it's really a big coordination thing as well. All right, so again, I already explained it would be like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 15-minute clock. And this would be the list of, again, the drills and progressions. This is the thing that we would go through. And you don't have to follow this to the T every single day. It would just be an option of things to go through. Some days you might skip a certain drill. Some days you might spend most of your time on a single one, right? And over time, you're going to start to move through this quicker. And even, this is a really useful kind of tidbit, even when you've done it, like, say you've mastered all this and you've gone all the way through all these drills, that doesn't mean that this is now like, oh yeah, now I get to throw that progression out the window. No, it's like now it's an extremely helpful warm-up that you can go through very quickly, and you'll be really prepped and ready to go at the beginning of your workouts. Different point. Anyway, going back to here, we can think about doing high, slow single unders. That's going to translate to a double under jump. We can think about pogo hops, so mimicking the exact jump, the body line action that we need. That when we go to put actually a jump rope in our hands, now we're not piking all over the place or like pulling up our knees or any of those faults that you see. Penguin hops, so again, being able to hear the timing and the sound of you hitting your thighs twice as you jump in the air. So feet impact the ground, and then it's a double flick, right? You can hear it. And it's the same sort of idea with the wrist flick. Now you're incorporating the actual hand motion into it. And then you actually start to practice those double unders and make attempts at them. Again, in a completely unfatigued environment. And then once you start to do that, you can start to add speed to that, where you're going through rope accelerations, you're trying to build speed, right? And then after you've added speed, then you add the volume, then you try to get as many unbroken reps as you can in maybe like a minute, right? And maybe once you're at like 100, then you can start to throw it into mixed modal work like traditional WODs or Metcons or whatever you want to call it, right? And then the last thing I would say is once you've actually done that, you can throw it into workouts and you still hold on to your technique and it doesn't break down a lot. Then the last one is going and putting like arousal on top of that or changing your state, right? Or again, that's another tier 2 skill, but basically being able to compete in any environment and still be able to keep that technique, right? Things to think about, right? So again, basically today we covered principles of motor learning, right? That's essentially what this is, right? So hopefully that was helpful to you guys. Yeah, again, just skill acquisition in general is a big part of this sport. So if you guys have questions, please let me know. My email is ben@zoarfitness.com. You can go down below and actually fill out a form that I'll answer. If you have a question for an Ask Ben episode in the future, go there, fill that out, and I'll be happy to answer your question. And then lastly, go over to zoarfitness.com for fitness articles and one-on-one coaching for the sport of fitness. Thanks. We'll see you next time.